Hello everyone, welcome back to the SMITE Comprehensive Guide to Support. Apparently Amadou 1117 is a rager according to this lobby, but we'll deal with that mountain when we get to it. I wanted to talk about Cabrakan because he is the origin of a very interesting meme. The best crowd control is death. Alright, I want to address this meme because on paper, that is really logical. The problem with, as I've covered before, the problem with killing enemies as a support is that typically because you are playing support, you're trying to build up that damage, you're not bringing that damage into the late game. You just can't. Your scaling isn't high enough for that. It just doesn't usually work. However, Cabrakan does have a variety of really interesting support type abilities. He's actually an extremely effective support and one of my favorites. He also plays a really strong jungle, but we'll talk about that later on down the road. Now, a lot of people might get confused as to which specific ability you should really be using with him. It is always Tremors to start with, because that is going to do so much really nice damage overall. We're going to go for Sentinel's Gift because we are playing support. We're going to stick with classic support here. I'm not going to go buck wild here. We're not going to do anything crazy because, first off, before you can play a really effective damage Cabrakan, you really need to understand how to play a really effective support Cabrakan, okay? Because this is the crux of understanding him as he was originally designed, which is as a support. So we start with Tremors. We start with Impact Tremors. There's two reasons we start with Impact Tremors. First off, it's a stinking huge ability. We can actually start this over here. We will pull minions over, which is what we want. We want the minions to be pulled over. Second, it gives Tremors, which you would think isn't that great, and on paper it really isn't, but Tremors, incidentally, well, actually, they call it Tremble now, but it used to be known as Tremors, and it actually has a mild slow effect as well. So it can be really, really effective in a lot of ways. And actually, Gem of Isolation can really work wonders on Cabrakan for a variety of reasons. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. I accidentally pressed. And we're going to just start right off with that. You'll want to start it a second or two before the minions actually descend. The only real issue with Impact Tremors is, well, with Tremors is the amount of mana it takes up, which is why you usually want to start with Hog right there. It just takes too long. What we're going to immediately do is we're just going to run in here. We're going to just... I mistimed this slightly. Alright, and they have Danzaburger, which is not great. But we did enough there to actually... That's fine. That worked out by accident, but Danzaburger was not a great... ADC to go against his Cabrakan because he's very vulnerable to everything Danzaburger does. Danzaburger throws his Saki for the taunt. Yeah, that's a problem because you're standing still for Tremors. He throws those bags of gold. Yeah, see, right there. He just tried it right there. I'm not fast enough yet. Cabrakan has a little bit of a hard time until he hits his full movement speed at level 12. Because the movement speed increase here, first off, obviously that improves. Second off, generally speaking, the higher your base movement speed, the better your movement speed increase is going to be. So Cabrakan has a little bit of a hard time with that first ability, which is called Seismic Crush. I keep forgetting the names of abilities. Seismic Crush becomes more viable later on when you actually have the movement speed. You see, he goofed that. He got arrogant. Now, Xiblanque went for this, obviously, which is the smart move, by the way. I was just trying to push them under tower, mostly as a hard commit. I really didn't need to do that. It wasn't bad, because it did force them back. It gave Xiblanque time to start that with no problems. I'm not going to use Tremors here, because I don't want to use the mana. And then we're going to go ahead and increase the Refraction Shield. Now, why is Refraction Shield second? Because it actually needs to build up before it can become a stun. Cabrakan's interesting in that he has 2 stuns. You'll see right there the Fractured Shield. When all those cracks fill up, all those shards fill up, it stuns. At level 2, that's going to take too long. You don't want that because it does take too long for that to build up like that. So you really want Seismic Crush first, because that's just an automatic stun that you're guaranteed to get. It increases your movement speed if you really need it as an escape ability. It's really a good time. But at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, what you actually are going to want to increase in the long term is Refraction Shield. You want to increase that first once you have all three of your abilities, because that's going to actually increase your protections, and it increases the stun duration on this. So it becomes more worthwhile for you to increase Refraction Shield from level 4 onwards. Obviously, we're going to grab our ult at level 5, but once we get our ults, we're looking at increasing Refraction Shield the rest of the time, both for the increase in protections it provides us, which are really powerful early game, and then secondly, because it's going to increase that stun effect. Even if it's not as consistent a stun, because we have to wait for our shards to fill up over there. See, I have the stun now. Those shards are all filled up. Not a problem. And we're in great shape. Now, it's extremely important. I don't talk about this a whole lot for starter items with supports, because you have a staggering variety of support starter items, and a lot of the times you can work really well with one or the other. I think the only time you really specifically want to use War Flag is if you're a support that has good auto attacks, like for instance, Ymir is really good with War Flag. There we go. Okay, he did have enough mana for the jump, but that's fine. I didn't think he had the mana for that, to be honest. I miscalculated. That's on me. It's a very short cooldown. You'll notice, though, it's only 75 seconds rather than the usual 90, so it's not that much of a problem that I used that there. We're just going to go ahead and pull from this, because we're just about here. And I'm going to try to pull the enemy. We'll wait a couple of seconds for Sentry Ward. I will have a very specific idea. Anyways, it's very, very important for Cabrakan to have Sentinel's Gift very specifically, because it is going to give him the mana he needs to actually consistently be able to use Tremors. It gets very difficult for him to support properly in the early game, because thanks to Tremors, he's unusually mana intensive even as a support. Supports already are fairly ability-based a lot of the time anyways, as you've probably figured out from this series, but Cabrakan in particular, Cabrakan and Bacchus are far and away the most mana-intensive supports in the game, and you really need Sentinel's Gift on these two very specifically. I'm just going to randomly just throw Bacchus out there just so you have a general idea. But they have higher than average mana requirements due to their kits. For Bacchus, it's his need to have the alcohol available to make sure that he is drunk enough to get his secondary abilities. For Cabrakan, it's the rather intensive mana use of Tremors. You also have to be very careful with Tremors. Incidentally, you've probably assumed this, but you have to treat Tremors with the same kind of caution you would treat Khepri's Abduct. It leaves you very vulnerable to a lot of very ugly potential situations because you are stationary. I actually mentioned one of the downsides of this specifically versus Danzaburou, but that applies to a lot of things. For example, if Vulcan put down a turret just there, I would be having a really rough time because that turret's really going to hurt me because the turret has increased penetrations. So that turret can really slap me down, and I don't want that. So I'll need for that the whole match, I'll need to be very careful of where I'm tremoring in comparison to where Vulcan's turrets are. She stayed too long. Now, I'm approaching from behind for a very specific reason that no longer is relevant anymore. I was going to use my wall to try to block them off from Fenrir. However, he died, so that no longer is really of concern. Cabrakan is one of the very few supports that can approach from behind, and make that a positive situation. Okay, that was the downside right there of... And I'm going to die here. That's fine. How did I not die? Excuse me? I survived that? I should not have survived that, to be completely honest. The tower goofed. That was great. I should have died there. It would have been okay if I died. Fenrir built we'll have to have a conversation about that. That's weird. But yeah, we'll Fenrir, who's built wrong in the first place, is should have killed me, and it would have been fine if he had. Because of his mistake of not building not building a starter item, he's not going to be able to turn any kills into anything. So I'm not worried about it. And he's backed. I'm just going to stick around. I want to stick around very specifically because I want to hold this wave for Zeus. Yeah, he's going to... Did he just assume Loki was there and that's why he put that down there? Or did he accidentally twitch his mouse or something to not put it where he, you know, not have it facing me? I'm not really sure. And you've probably figured out that, yeah, Cabrakan's pretty good against anyone who doesn't have a jump. Boo. And I want you to observe this, right? He's backing up real fast. That is the psychological supporting, right? I didn't need to use anything other than that one ability. By the way, we're going to very specifically increase Seismic Crush. Next, I'll explain why in a second, but you'll notice that I just ran at him with Seismic Crush activated. He backed off real quick. This is psychological supporting, and not a lot of people, actually almost no one talks about it, and that means it's not talked about enough. You can very effectively support someone by just being able to present a credible enough threat. Now, usually this requires you to accidentally having gotten a kill as a support. Yeah. You absolute mad lad. You got him, too. And I'm going to get out of this. No, I'm not. Alright, he killed me, but that's... Yo, he is making a mistake. I know what he's doing. And it's not going to end well for him. That technically wasn't worth because it was 2 for 1. How was Xiblanque behind? No. But he'll be ahead now. Yeah, he's dead. No, he won't. What I'm going to increase next is very specifically sovereignty. There's a reason for this. I have a passive, Shadow Zone, that just decreases the damage allies are taking from enemies. Just 5% less damage across the board. Beautiful. Combine this with some powerful auras, and Cabrakan becomes the most powerful aura bot support in the game. Alright, it is absolutely incredible how little damage my allies will be taking in the very near future. Shoot. That was so close. Nope. So anyways, back to the point. I'm going to go with a pseudo aura bot strategy. I'm not going to commit too hard to this. I'm just going to build sovereignty, and of course I have Gauntlet of Thebes, obviously. What are you doing, punk? Don't you even dare try to go after Zeus. You stunned me. Congratulations. I'm not concerned at this point. I have almost full health. I have full stacks of my everything. I mean, by the time I get there, it's not going to matter. I'll grab this really quick, though. Oh, wait. Osiris is deep. He shouldn't be here. He is being way too aggressive for where he's at. Nope, I'm not going to catch up to that. I'm surprised he got away with that. He's slightly higher than Loki, sure, but his ally, it's because he's hard carrying them. He didn't have the ability, he doesn't have the backup for that. That was bold. Ah. What do you mean, please? You should be able to handle that. You have better wave clear than he does. My goodness. Now, anyways, back to the point. Why are we increasing Seismic Clash very specifically here? Well, primarily because that is... No, just retreat. Just retreat. Now, the reason I'm increasing Seismic Crush is because that's going to increase my movement speed boost, which means that I'll be able to land those stuns a lot easier. You don't need help right now. Yes, you do. Why is the enemy all over the place? What is this? This is crazy. That was weird. And that's going to be you dead. I don't have the mana for this. I don't care about E-set. Can we take out? Yes. Shoot. Get him, get him. Yep. Keep it going. There we go. We're alright, we're alright. Nope, 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 nope. You don't have the health for that, and I don't have the mana. We are not going to commit to that. You're over here for some bizarre reason. Not enough. Alright. Keep on increasing Seismic Crush. We have an opportunity here. Yep. That's fine. I'm going to leave that. We don't need that. That's not important. We're going to go ahead and help Zeus with this, and then we're going to go back for mana. He's overcommitting. No, he's fine. He's fine. I thought for sure he was going to die in that jungle there. All right, now we have Sovereignty. What else would you ideally want on Cabrakan? Well, a couple of these answers are going to surprise you, but we're going to hold off on those for a bit, because right now what we really need is magic protections. And what I want very specifically is Talisman of Energy. Now, there's a couple of reasons why I'm choosing Talisman of Energy over Shogun's Kusari, although Shogun's Kusari is just as effective, just in a different way. Right now, what I want is the move speed. Vulcan moves a little faster than the average mage. Danzaboto moves a little faster than the average mage. They've got Fenrir on there. I'm going to need to run like the Dickens. E-set moves pretty damn quick. A lot of their team moves faster than average. Okay? In order to keep up with them, I will need the bonus movement speed of Talisman of Energy. If this was a lot of other compositions, I could probably get away with Shogun's Kusari. But I am also going for Talisman of Energy specifically to increase the attack speed of my allies. Zeus has good autos. Amaterasu has good autos. Loki has good autos, even though not a lot of people use them. And then finally, we have the very nice ability to throw more seismic charges out there. Why are we... Oh, they're paused. So that is why specifically we're going with that. Now, at this particular point, we're almost done with Seismic Charge, Seismic Crush. We're going to be able to finish that level up. At this particular point, where you take your build is going to really entirely depend on you. Some people like to increase Tectonic Shift for a nice spike in damage. Some people like the damage out of Tremors instead. It's pretty much whatever. I tend to increase Tectonic Shift more because Tremors gets a pretty high mana cost per blow as it goes along. Okay, so I tend to just increase Tectonic Shift whenever I can. And that way Tremors mana consumption becomes a little bit more manageable. This is also partially bolstered by the fact that I don't have Talisman of Energy yet. I will eventually have that. I will get the MP5 from that, which will really help with that. And then I will be less concerned about the mana cost of Tremors. But in the meantime, I gotta get that MP5 first, so we're not really gonna focus too much on Tremors right now. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be doing this. This is just me absolutely brutalizing. Yeah, I missed that. That's fine. Because what we're going to do is this. A little bit of a slowdown there. Who's this? We're going to come over here and we're going to defend. Yep, there we go. Now notice I was able to get between the Zeus and the Osiris for very odd body block, but that's all I needed. That can only really work in very specifically small spaces like that because he couldn't physically get past me. That was the key there. It's very difficult in the jungle a lot of the times to actually maneuver around someone really large like Cabrakan. So I just used that to my advantage, kept Zeus safe. Now Zeus wasn't necessarily in danger of dying there, but I wasn't about to take any chances because I didn't know where Vulcan was. So I was just kind of concerned at that point. Now we've got some magic protections, now we've got some nice physical protections. What are we going to do next? Well, I very specifically want to bring in Witchblade because, oops, what I need next also is, I'm going to grab Horrific Emblem actually. What I need next is very specifically Witchblade because, again, it comes down to the auto attacks. With the exception of Vulcan, the entire enemy team has decent auto attacks at minimum, if not strong auto attacks, so I do want to do something about that very specifically. So we're just going to go ahead and build Witchblade. It's going to give me a little bit of cooldowns as well, which is really nice. We'll just go ahead and do this for a little while, even though this is very expensive on mana. But that's okay. Going to increase Tremors here. We have a nice 62 MP5 right now, so we're not really concerned about our mana consumption. I'm just going to come in here, grab some assists, get more. Ta-da! 72, 82, 92. I'm going to come over here. Now, why am I heading left? You know, I actually shouldn't be looking at the situation. Now that Fenrir's going over there, I'm going to need to. She shouldn't be this far up. The only reason she can get away with this is because the enemy solo is just missing. Now that is a very interesting way for me to counter Fenrir's ult. I don't get to do that very often, and I'm glad I was able to show you this in this episode. Very nice, very useful there. Oh, you silly little Tanuki. There are a lot of almost dead people in here. And just kill him off, I guess. Where are you at? There you are. Just trying to make sure that I don't get whacked. We've got Loki here, so I'm not too concerned. I guess I'll just grab another kill right there. And not die, ideally. They're probably going to surrender soon if Iset doesn't come back soon enough. Nope. 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 I don't have the health for this. We also aren't going to be able to take that. We need to get out of here. Grab this really quick, because why not? Good. And now I gotta go. I gotta go. Oh, Can you give me a second? I guess with Amaterasu there, they aren't gonna need me, but... I'm gonna leave that for Loki. He's... around the same? Yeah, he's very slightly higher than Osiris. Alright. Increase Tremors. You're not worth it. Are you building tank, by the way? No. Well, vaguely. Still not worth it, though. You're in pretty good condition. We can actually take this. I missed that. She dives. Okay. I think this is an awfully hard commit. What are we doing? Really? Oh, goodness. This is too hard of a commit. We weren't... Just because they're down a person does not necessarily mean we can just win in any fight we want. Good stun by the Fenrir there. I don't really care. You don't hit hard at all. I was trying to figure out if he meant to go for the enemy gods or go for the tower. I was a little confused. They stuck around anyways. Okay. I don't need this in my life. Thank you. Now I do. Come on. Oh, so close. A couple of more tremors, I would have killed him. Not a big deal. Now, at this point, we're actually going to go into Spear the Magus, because tremors plus everything Cabrakan does damage, so everything is going to trigger Spear the Magus. Combine that with 2 stuns that he's got in his kit, well, 1.5 stuns, technically, plus the tremors, plus the wall from his ult. It can very quickly become what I call the shooting gallery scenario, which is where your targets are stationary and particularly vulnerable. And just Spear the Magus is absolutely devastating, and because it has a little bit of lifesteal on it now, it actually heals you a little bit. Nothing really significant, but combine that with the HP 5 from Sovereignty in this particular case, it actually is a fairly impressive amount of self-sustain throughout the match. Not necessarily for teamfights specifically, although if you ever need to, you can always just waltz out and blast a jungle camp or two if you really need it. That's not that big of a problem, because you can actually heal off of the jungle camps at that point, and they're not going to be doing enough damage to you to counteract that healing, as slight as it might be. So it's fairly worthwhile. No, you don't. There's the Saki. Yeah, well, we're here. I'm gonna go ahead and smack this down. Good. I think we should probably get rid of Vulcan first. I don't want to attack the Fire Giant while Vulcan's up, because Vulcan has a great jungle camp stealing ult. Okay, good. No, we don't need Vulcan. At that point, Vulcan's not going to press this. Not without the backup of... Just go for it. He's not going to press this. Xiblanque is spending too much time on that, honestly. And he really should be here with us doing this. We're going to be able to do it anyways. It's not really a huge concern, but it is going to take us longer than it probably should. He died, for Pete's sakes. Alright. He didn't need to die there. He overcommitted. This is an interesting thing. You'll probably, even though I don't normally upload when a member of either team disconnects for whatever reason, this is actually a good opportunity to not only showcase some of the cool things Cabrakan does. I'll obviously be doing another Cabrakan episode at some point in the future, because this doesn't quite demonstrate everything he can bring to the table for the fairly obvious reason. I'm not gonna go for that. I'm just gonna stay here, guard this, continue to tank this for a little bit here. We're going to pop out of here. You didn't kill him, so I'll have to. I was going to say, I really shouldn't survive that. I was perfectly willing to sacrifice myself there for the good of the team. And in this particular case, it really worked out. I think I'm the only one. No, Loki died. They're going to be able to take the... well, they should be able to take the Titan at this point. I'm not so sure, though. Zeus is not focusing enough on the Titan. He's too concerned about Vulcan. Yeah, he spent too much time on Vulcan. Xiblanque wasn't there. It was just a whole big mess. She's going to get picked off by Vulcan if she's not careful. Vulcan's unusually good at taking out tankier targets, mostly because of his turret. I'll talk about that at the end of the match. But, alright, at the very least, we have enough for Sentinel's Embrace, which, again, combined with Cabrakan's passive, makes for some absolutely incredible defenses for your allies. Makes him an unusually interesting Aurabot to play. It just is absolutely fantastic. And, of course, we're still going to be bringing in some extra damage with Spear the Magus. It just gets very messy very quickly. This is a really great build for Cabrakan. It's one of my favorites. Again, Talisman of Energy or Shogun's Kusari, it really depends on the situation. I just needed the extra movement speed against this particular composition due to their kits. Again, Vulcan moves fast, Fenrir moves fast, Danzaburg moves fast, Osiris moves... I believe he moves fast if he has the tendrils on people. I'll have to double check that. I don't remember if they kept that on or not. I know it used to be that way. I'm not concerned about Fenrir. He does not do damage. But he's still killing Amaterasu. Alright. Damn you. They're going to spend too much time on him. I already know this. But anyways, back to the main point. Even when an enemy disconnects, there's still the possibility you can lose. I've been on teams that have lost games, even when the enemy team was missing a person, because the team with the full team gets really cocky. And you could see that throughout the game. We could have won that earlier if my team wasn't so focused on kills. There were several points in which you could see this just blatantly obviously being displayed here. That would be very specifically when Xiblanque was at mid lane while we were at the Fire Giant. That was... him being in mid lane there was pure greed, probably brought on by the fact that Iset wasn't there. Okay? Very likely why that happened. Zeus focusing on the Vulcan over the Titan at the end, also probably the same thing. He was probably looking for the extra kills just to improve his score. I mean, the mentality being, oh, there's only 4 of them, you know, whatever. The problem with this is that in the early to mid game, having only 4 people isn't necessarily a disadvantage. It's only in the late game that it's a disadvantage. The reason why is because in the early to mid game, when everyone's trying to get golden experience, even though there's 1 person missing, the remaining 4 aren't splitting that golden experience. They have to absorb whatever that golden experience would normally be. I mean, obviously the minions don't quite get that. But then the jungler has a whole jungle and occasionally pops into the lane, whatever lane is missing someone, to grab that minion farm. And since the jungler isn't spending as much time in the jungle, that means that the other laning allies, the mid and the ADC, can now pop into their respective jungle areas and clear their own buffs, which allows them to get a little farther ahead of their opposition than they normally would be able to. So for the early to mid game, losing a teammate isn't necessarily that bad of a thing, unless it's at the extreme beginning of the game, like before minions spawn, because then the jungler obviously is clearing the jungle and isn't in a position where he can cover that lane, where they can cover that lane. So that lane is just going to be absolutely screwed right off the top, and honestly, I'll be surprised if the jungler can make it there often enough to save that within the first 10 minutes. But in this particular case, and this is the reason why they put up a decent fight afterwards, Iset left in the middle of the game. And that meant that, at least for the remainder of the mid-game period, the remaining 4 would actually be able to get stronger than us. You'll actually notice that they kept fairly well up with us in levels, despite doing not great. They had a much lower... They had almost 10 more deaths than they did kills. But despite that, they were very close to our levels. I was only 1 level ahead of the Fenrir, and Loki was only 2 levels ahead of the Osiris and didn't do a whole lot better. He was only 2,000 gold ahead. Fenrir was 4,000 gold behind me, but that's because he didn't build Sentinel's Gift like he should have, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Zeus only had 2,200 more than Vulcan, which sounds like a lot, but then you're talking mids, and Zeus was carrying in the first place. So you can see where they didn't do as badly as you would expect, given that they only had 4 people halfway through the game. And that's really what I'm talking about here. They were able to pull a little bit of extra golden experience and just disperse that across the team. That little extra that Iset would have normally gotten, barring, again, missed minion waves, but any minion wave that was grabbed by somebody like Osiris would have been bonus golden experience for the rest of the group, and like I said, they would have been able to access different camps and more camps and stuff like that, and they'd be splitting experience and gold less often and in fewer ways. It's only once everyone's level 20 and we hit the late game that having a person missing is fatal. But this is, if you lose someone in the early game but it's not before the first wave, you actually, if you can turn that around and win in the mid game, you still have a shot. Once you hit late game, it's over. It really is. You basically, someone leaving a team after first minion wave is dead, specifically dead. After the first minion wave dies, at minimum, at the absolute earliest, anywhere from there before the majority of people hit level 20, you still have a chance as long as you can kill them in the mid game. Okay, you have to try your absolute hardest to snowball as much as you can, sponging off of whatever that missing person would have gotten, and from there snowball into a aggressive mid-game victory, because otherwise you're not going to win. Now, does this sound difficult? Yeah, it's because it is. It is difficult to pull this off, but I have done it, and I have been the victim of it. And what really helps is, like what I was saying earlier, is the psychology of the now larger team changes. They become way more aggressive, despite the fact that at that point they're probably a lower level. They then also have this really odd issue where they will make strategically unwise decisions. There was a Fire Giant call when Vulcan, Osiris, and Fenrir were still alive. That was a bad call. Vulcan was still alive, and Vulcan's ult has the possibility of absolutely stealing the Fire Giant. It was not a great call. But it was made because, oh, they only have 4 people, what can they do? They can still do a whole lot. And in that, if you can exploit that psychological advantage that you now have by missing a person, you can turn a game around in the mid-game and win if you're bold enough, if you're aggressive enough, if your team communicates well, things like that. Now, what was also fairly interesting and what I think contributed to what I believe was an ESET rage quit, but I can't prove it, is how aggressive the enemy team was in the jungle so early. We had an early game advantage. We got the first couple of kills. We had a majority of kills in the early game, and yet Osiris was in our jungle. We had Fenrir in our jungle. We had Danzabaru in our jungle. Hell, Vulcan came into our jungle at one point. A majority of the enemy team was up in our jungle, on our half of the jungle. It wasn't even their jungle, it was ours. And at first blush, that looks like, hey, they're getting, they killed Zeus, they killed Loki, they killed Xbalanque. Hey, they're really doing well. Not so much. You have to remember that when you're in the enemy jungle like that, you are first off in a more exposed position, which they obviously knew and accepted. Second, you're not in your lane farming. Alright, even if you get a kill, unless you're getting multiple kills, at least 1 kill per wave that you've missed, it's not really worth it. And that doesn't even factor into travel time to and from whatever fight you're in. In the early game like that, it's often actually not a great idea to invade the enemy's jungle like that, because there are disadvantages to that, namely in how much golden experience you're losing. Right now, with the numbers that are currently present in the game, minions are more worthwhile than god kills a lot of the time. The only point to killing someone in the early game is to prevent them from getting their minion farm. Basically, that is what that comes down to. And as a result, team fighting in the jungle is not a particularly good strategy. This is why it caught me so off guard. And this is, again, you can actually visibly see where I was confused and I didn't adapt quite as quickly as I could have, and Zeus and Xbalanque died as a result. Primarily Zeus, because it didn't even dawn on me that Osiris would be willing to go that deep. It happened twice, actually, in that match. Osiris went after Loki's speed buff, and then later on he went after my health buff. I wasn't expecting him to be in either of these places. He was a little behind at that point, and it just didn't make sense to me. And as a result of that, it totally blew my mind, and I was not prepared to get into that fight until too late. That is on me. But that doesn't change the fact that it was still a very poor decision, because it wound up pulling away the rest of his allies from their respective lanes. I know for a fact Xiblanque got an extra wave out of that because he joined the fight after Danzaburou did, and he was spending that time clearing that wave, clearing another wave, and getting a little bit more gold, a little bit more experience, and then entered the fight, and his minions pushed down the tower and did some damage to it, I believe. Either that or they engaged in combat with Danzaburou's minion wave much closer to the tower, applying extra pressure on Danzaburou the next time Xiblanque and he fought in that lane. And that's really what that problem was there. Alright? But this was a really great episode to showcase some of the cool stuff Cabrakan can do. I think the blocking off of Fenrir using his ult is a great application of that. But overall, I also wanted to talk about the pros and cons of someone leaving a team, because if you've been playing SMITE long enough, you've probably lost to some team who had lost someone in the middle of the match. And again, if you did lose, you probably lost in the mid game. But yeah, there were some weird strategic decisions on both sides. Now, Fenrir didn't start with Sentinel's Gift. This was a huge mistake on his part. He went for a very, very late Protector's Mask. Alright, this would have been fine if it had been his first item, like it probably should have been, this or Sentinel's Gift. Whatever, totally fine, either one. He built it so late, though. This is actually why he's nearly 4 grand down on me, right? He's behind me in almost 4,000 gold. This is why. He built the Protector's Mask / Sentinel's Gift way, way too late. There's a reason you start with Sentinel's Gift, and that reason is the gold. Alright? For Cabrakan, it's also about the mana. But gold is still chief priority, right? He did go for, his build is fairly standard overall, except for the inclusion of Gladiator's Shield, which I can kind of understand why he built. But he didn't start with Sentinel's Gift, so he was behind in gold. He was behind in experience. He didn't have the sustain, because he went right for Gauntlet of Thieves early game, which only has HP 5. Then he went for Glad's Shield. Kind of understandable, but not my favorite thing to build on even physical supports. Especially Fenrir, who needs the extra protections. Breastplate of Valor. The item itself isn't a mistake, it's when he built it. This should have been magic protection at this point. He already had physical protection in Glad's Shield. He already had both protections to some extent in Gauntlet of Thebes. He really should have built some form of magic protection, whether it would be Shogun's Kusari or something else, whatever. It should have been magic protections, then more physical. You kind of want to alternate your protection types to make at least in the early game, to make sure that, hey, you're going to survive the fight, right? And again, we've already talked about Fenrir as a support and my criticisms of Fenrir as a support, which I'm sure did not help Iset stay in the match. Now, I'm not saying that Iset quitting was the move. Iset chose to play a solo lane Iset. On paper, this works, and with some practice, you can get it to be extremely effective. The problem here was that the Iset versus Amaterasu matchup is not in Iset's favor. Amaterasu can silence Iset out of wing gusts, and generally doesn't care too much if she's slowed as a result. It's just a bad matchup, basically, is what it comes down to. And for some reason, building Conduit Gem as a solo, if you're going solo lane with a mage, please just build Hourglass. It gives you the MP5 you actually need, but I'll talk about that in a future episode as well. You'll see another support Cabrakan episode. I don't think this really captured the essence of Cabrakan. Again, I was able to show you some cool new things. I was able to talk about the pros and cons of being short-handed on a team, so it still turned out to be a good enough episode to upload. But there are definitely some extenuating circumstances here. But with that being said, thank you all very much for joining me. If you liked this, please like and subscribe. If you didn't, please ignore me. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, ideas, suggestions, or requests, please leave them down in the comment section below. And thank you all very much for joining me, and have a great 24 hours.